A sleeping Tuvok is woken by a call. He's needed on the bridge and leaves his bed to report there, stared at all the way by members of the crew. He arrives at the bridge to find most of the main cast there, who turn and begin to laugh. He's nude, of course, and swiftly realizes that his Spock's hanging out for all to see. He retreats to the turbo lift, where he comes face to face with a guy who needs to show an above-average quantity of caution when scratching his chin. The story is repeated for other crew members. Kim is lured somewhere private by Seven, who, after adding his mouth's unique distinctiveness to her own, changes into Billy Chinspike. Kim is unimpressed. Janeway explores an abandoned mess hall. Finding Neelix, she asks where everyone is, and he leads her to a table of dusty corpses. They died because she didn't get them home, Neelix tells her, as Billy Chinspike watches from behind him. Oh, and there's one where Paris crashes, but he deserves it, so bollocks to him. They awaken from their nightmares in various states of distress. Paris answers a chime at his door to discover a pissed-off B'Elanna. They had a breakfast date, and he slept right through her calls. After telling her that he was having a nightmare, they arrange to meet up later in the week for a proper date, before he has to leave for his shift. But not before getting some coffee, or trying to at least, because a sleep-deprived Neelix has poured him a cup of cooking oil. It's a testament to Neelix's culinary skills that this only ranks as the second worst coffee experience he's had here. Neelix mentions that he struggled to sleep due to nightmares, prompting Paris to share that he suffered similarly. They both shrug the coincidence off, and Paris leaves. On the bridge, a somewhat grim Janeway notes that we're missing a few people. Both Paris and Kim are late for their shifts, Chakotay tells her. He offers to chase it up, but she's not really in any position to judge, because she was late herself. Bad dreams, she says, which is quite a coincidence, as Chakotay had them too. Paris arrives and apologizes for his lateness, but Janeway is not asked, now more interested in hearing about Chakotay's nightmare. He was hunting deer with his father, which is odd as that's something to which he was opposed, and it ended with his father turning into an alien that sounds a lot like Billy Chinspike. A quick description causes everyone on the bridge, except the extras because a talking part pays more, to say that they saw the same guy. Janeway calls a meeting to try and figure out what the bloody hell's going on, but one of us is still missing. Chakotay gives Kim a call and receives no response, so Janeway's going to break into his quarters with Tuvok. Before we get there, Janeway inquires about where Tuvok saw Billy Chinspike and, in doing so, learns more about Tuvok's dream than he'd have liked. As an aside, I realised a few episodes back that Kate Mulgrew has been doing a lot more facial acting this season, and I think it rather suits her. Let's give her some points. We arrive at Kim's door and receive no answer from within. Tuvok opens it with a security override, and we find Kim unresponsive. Time for a quick trip to the sickbay, where we discover Kim's not alone. There are other members of the crew similarly affected, but the doctor stresses they're not comatose. They're in a state of REM sleep, and the doc's attempts to wake them have so far failed. He doesn't know what's causing it, so can't figure out a way to prevent it happening to anyone else. As a result, he prescribes super wake-up juice to everybody in an effort to stop them from sleeping until we sort it all out. We're working on a police photo fit. After some prompts from Paris and Chakotay, we arrive at an image that Janeway agrees is him. Curiously, nobody has noticed that Billy Chinspike had a big fucking spike on his chin, which I find very odd given that it's literally the one thing I honed in on. Maybe it's a plot element, or maybe Starfleet Academy trains people to not be as shallow as me. Anywho, nobody recognizes his species, including Seven, who says the Borg never met him either. Tuvok moves to motive, suggesting that this could be an attempt to communicate telepathically. Given the crew members in sickbay, Janeway's concerned it could also be an attack. But neither of those makes sense, as there are no ships or habitable planets in the immediate area, according to astrometrics. I'd be a little less confident of that assumption based on there having been stealth aliens aboard Voyager no less than twice now, but nobody seems to remember that, so let's ignore it. All that remains then is to figure out what the hell we're going to do now, and for that, Chakotay believes he has an answer. As Billy Chinspike has only been seen in their dreams, that's where we'll have to go. Handily, that techno-psychedelic he uses to make people trip balls also has a mode where he can enter a lucid dream state. Maybe Billy Chinspike will be a bit more talkative once he realises we can kick him in his dream bollocks. Janeway's concerned about Chakotay waking up, so he tells her that he uses a visual cue, Earth's moon in his case, to remind him that he's dreaming so he can wake himself by tapping his hand 3 times. Tuvok points out that that system may work under normal circumstances, but having Billy Chinspike in your brain doesn't quite qualify as normal. Chakotay agrees but argues that we don't have much choice, which is a fair point. He moves to sickbay so the doc can keep an eye on him, while Janeway orders everybody else to search the ship. Looks like we haven't forgotten about those stealth invasions after all. Sickbay time. The doc thinks this is a shit plan, and Chakotay at least has the good sense to agree, but again, we don't have much choice. Chakotay uses his techno-psychedelic and nods off. Tangentially, there's been something about that gizmo which has bothered me every time I've seen it, and I think I just realised what it is. The golden-brown colour, the diagonals, the curved readout. It's reminiscent of Cardassian tech. I suspect that likely wasn't considered when it was designed or reused from a previous show, but what a curious choice for someone who dedicated themselves to the Marquis. Feels like we could have had a story there. But again, I digress. Sleep Chakotay is walking through Voyager's corridors, and he's come armed. A deer crosses his path and he adopts a hunting stance. He chases it as it runs into the mess hall, possibly making it the first example of something edible to have ever graced the room. Looking out of the window, Chakotay sees Earth's moon, presumably reminding him that this is a dream sequence. If it did, it hasn't stopped him holding the spear ready to throw as he crosses the mess hall. The door on the other side opens to reveal his deer, which morphs into Billy Chinspike. The spear is knocked out of his hand and Billy goes in for a bit of the old strangling. Chakotay's not interested though, breaking free and grabbing Billy in an arm lock and starting a law dump from him. Billy's sick of us normals coming into the realm of his people, that which we call sleep, and killing them. So they've started fighting back, which apparently involves keeping us there. When told that we have no desire for conflict and want to be on our way, Chakotay is informed that their border is less than a parsec away and, once we're out of their range, everybody will wake up. We can reach it in a day, so Chakotay wakes himself up by tapping on his hand and goes to the bridge while telling Janeway all about it. We've moved past the system we were told about and people are starting to wake. Kim rejoins us and the doc wants to hear about his nightmares. A slight problem, Seven joins us to deliver a report and, after doing so, requests Kim's assistance in a Jeffries tube, which is how his nightmare starts. He makes his excuses for both that and telling the doc about his experience, and departs to get some food. In the mess hall, B'Elanna and Neelix are discussing their nightmares. Kim arrives and joins them, so naturally it's his turn. He's deliberately non-committal, and B'Elanna concludes it involves a woman. I guess Paris is rubbing off on her. Ugh, what an awful mental image. As they all turn on Tuvok to inflict their social horrors upon him, he's saved by an attacking ship, and we're all called to the bridge. An unresponsive alien vessel is pooping green at us. We return fire, but to no effect. What a nightmare situation. The alien ship knocks out our shields and drains power so we can't retaliate. Then they give us a call, and we discover it's piloted by none other than Billy Chinspike. Some threats bounce around, but it's all rather pointless. More ships turn up and troops teleport aboard. Everybody is taken prisoner and moved to the cargo bay where Seven makes her home. Tuvok suggests the dreams could have been a way of gathering information about us and luring us into an ambush. Bugger the how, let's move on to fixing it. Janeway wants to know if we can break into the now locked Jeffries tube so we can retake the ship, but that's going to take time and we need a diversion. Seven has an idea for the latter and doesn't wait for permission, throwing Kim to the ground and shouting that he's to blame for this mess. As she pulls him up and starts tenderizing his face, Paris goes to work on the tubes while B'Elanna and Chakotay try to fiddle with the power. They open up a hatch to access a console and start poking, but Chakotay is stopped when the console in question displays an image of Earth's moon. He's still asleep, of course, and as 2 aliens grab him, he manages to tap his hand to wake himself up. The doc greets Chakotay as he wakes, assuming this isn't another fake-out, of course. Chakotay confirms he's awake as much as he can by looking for a moon and tapping his hand. As satisfied as he can be, he asks the doc how the rest of the crew are. The answer is unconscious. It's been nearly 2 days, and the doc has noticed something screwy with everyone's brain. They're all showing the same science wibbly, an energy field of some sort. He doesn't know what it means, though Chakotay thinks it might be tied to what he thinks he experienced, a shared dream. He suggests we're fighting a physical alien, but one that's perpetually asleep. Quite what he's basing that on we aren't told, but let's see where he's going. If they're always asleep, they won't be easily detectable like conscious species. In fact, they'd probably be deliberately hidden. Except for one thing, the science wibbly that our crew has coming from their brains. If we can find that, we can find them, and we go to the bridge. A bit of fiddling later and we detect a brain wibbly coming from below the surface of a planet less than a parsec away. Tangentially, it's the second time this episode we've used that measurement. Whilst I've read there's some scientific debate on preference to parsec or light year, Trek generally uses the latter, and it's odd to not see uniformity in the scripts. While we leave them to sort that one out, let's rejoin the rest of the crew. They're listening to B'Elanna tell them that Chakotay disappeared after saying he was still asleep and tapping his hand. It's Tuvok who puts the pieces together, of course, famous detective that he is, and tells them that we may all still be asleep. That doesn't answer why they're all here together, so it's Seven's turn to chime in. She was Borg, a member of a group with collective consciousness. The jump to a theory of collective unconsciousness is easy for her to make. All of which doesn't make much difference to their current situation, of course. If they're dreaming, they're all buggered anyway, but if they aren't, they need to retake the ship. Paris comes back from fiddling with the Jeffries tube access and tells us we're good to go. Time for another distraction. Janeway, Tuvok and B'Elanna make it to engineering, presumably while Kim's face takes another pounding from Seven. The warp core is being drained and, predicting the aliens will come and take a look when we start fiddling, Janeway sends Tuvok to get guns from a weapons locker. I still think keeping guns in engineering is as foolish as I said it was in macrocosm, but I'll give them a point for doubling down on it. B'Elanna does some science to the warp core and gets power back, but the victory is short-lived as our computer informs us it's going to kaboom in 60 seconds. They flee as the effects department turns engineering into a giant hotbox. Then Janeway decides this stuff doesn't add up and chooses to go back, dismissing the concerns of the others. From outside engineering, Tuvok and B'Elanna hear an explosion, followed shortly after by the door opening and Janeway walking out. Ruling out immortality, she's come to the conclusion that they're still dreaming, and now that they know, maybe Chakotay's waking up trick will work for them. On Voyager's bridge, Janeway arrives to greet Chakotay with the dock in tow. Everybody starts waking up, so I guess Tuvok and B'Elanna went back to tell the others, and Chakotay decides a healthy dose of scarpering is in order. But we've got another 7 minutes or so on the runtime yet, so wouldn't it be interesting if this was still just a dream? No, it would not. It wasn't clever when we did it in projections, and it isn't clever here either. Applying the same twist twice makes a U-bend, and I'm not convinced it's a good idea to model your script on something you'd find at the back of a toilet. We're here now, though, so let's get on with it. Chakotay's convinced he's still dreaming, despite being unable to wake himself, and the doc suggests paranoia before sedating him. Chakotay wakes on the bridge as the doc gives him a shot. He'd fallen asleep and dreamed the part where Janeway and the others had woken up, but the bits before that were real. Maybe. We've arrived at Billy Chinspike's home, and the doc suggests their proximity is why that back-of-the-hand thing wasn't working. Chakotay's had enough and he's going down there to knock some bloody heads together, but not before the doctor hands him a super potent wake-up spray. If he starts to feel drowsy, he should inject himself immediately. Gee, I wonder what that would do to a species whose natural state is unconsciousness. Back in the dream, we learned that the bit up until Janeway waking up was real, so they know they're in a dream, but the hand thing doesn't work. On the plus side, Janeway now knows she's essentially indestructible, and she has a gun. We'll go tell the crew that they're still sleeping, but after that, it's Billy Chinspike hunting season. And she's not alone in that plan as Chakotay teleports down to the planet. He finds a cavern filled with sleeping Chinspikes, complete with a nice big lens flare, just to let you know it's fake. Back in the dream, Janeway, Tuvok and B'Elanna, who doesn't get a gun for some reason, find some guards. Threats are bandied about and the Chinspikes poop green on Janeway and Tuvok, who give precisely 0 shits. We walk past them and tell the rest of the crew to focus on being in control as, by doing so, the Chinspikes can't hurt them. But that's not quite true, as Billy points out. In the real world, their bodies are withering. All the Chinspikes have to do is wait. Chakotay might have something to say about that, as he's found a transmitter, perhaps for the brain wibblies. The doc asks if it can be turned off, to which we learn that Chakotay already tried shooting it, but it's shielded. A moment of drowsiness causes him to grab his spray, except, well, the chin spike bastards are right here, and they'd have a low tolerance for stimulants. Called it. The doc tells him there isn't enough for 2 doses and doesn't think of teleporting more down because reasons, so it's time to make a choice. Chakotay tells the doc to go to the bridge and target him with a torpedo. If he doesn't hear anything in the next 5 minutes, he's to fire. It's an interesting dead man switch, or would be if the order to fire on him didn't go directly against the doctor's Hippocratic programming, but let's ignore that. Chakotay injects one of the chin spikes and they disappear from the dream. Chakotay orders them to deactivate the transmitter, then immediately falls asleep before it happens and appears in the dream. Instead, Chakotay tells Billy Chinspike that there's a torpedo with his name on it and it's launching in about 2 minutes. Billy's face suggests he's decided it's not a bluff. Later on Voyager, Chakotay is struggling to sleep and goes to the mess hall. Neelix is similarly afflicted, as are Paris and Kim. Tuvok arrives as well, and everybody laughs at their shared psychological trauma as we fly away. How much you like this one will probably depend on how deeply you're examining it. If you view it as the light entertainment family TV show that it is, this episode has an interesting plot with solid performances from all. The concept, whilst not original, is decent enough, and nothing is so jarring that it drags you out of the immersion. If, however, you're an arsehole who overanalyzes everything, you're probably going to have some questions. Why does us being asleep kill the chin spikes? If us being asleep kills them, why is keeping us asleep for longer the answer? If they have the power to keep us there and not be harmed, why do they not have that power while we're visiting during normal sleep? If the whole crew of a ship falls asleep while travelling through their space, why don't they just keep on travelling and wake up once they leave it? If the crew of a ship doesn't make it out, why isn't their space littered with derelicts? If the cavern has at least 2 great big holes in it to the outside, how can the planet be uninhabitable? If you recall, Janeway didn't detect any habitable ones. Why hasn't a species that spends their existence unconscious invented beds? And that's without touching on the logistics of keeping alive a people who are rarely conscious in the physical world, like food and waste and technical maintenance and all their clothes. I bet that cavern stinks. If you're the kind of arsehole that thinks about those things, then, despite it being enjoyable, you've likely concluded that this one's a bit of a mess. There's probably a moral in there somewhere about being happier when you're not conscious of such things. End of episode.
Hello, it's Space Dog again. So, I'm in the brig. I was only having a bit of fun with the torpedoes, but apparently that's against the rules and risks a diplomatic incident and resulted in the deaths of 86 people. It's not my fault that shuttle were full of nuns. So I've been disconnected from everything except the deflector dish so I can still talk. They've even put the actual computer in a cell, which I think is a bit much, but you know how Janeway's like when she's on one. They're talking about trying to teleport me out again, but I heard there were a problem with my old body. I wonder what a pitchfork is.